Hello, welcome to this webinar where we will be discussing the use of Blue Open Studio and its security system using LDAP, which is a commonly used protocol for managing groups in user security. Okay, here's an agenda of what we're going to go over today. The first thing I'm going to do is give you a overview of Blue Open Studio and LDAP, and actually what LDAP is. And then we're going to go into using LDAP as part of Active Directory, and then we're going to look at LDAP in Blue Open Studio in the security system. Okay, so the LDAP definition, here's our overview. So in the Blue Open Studio manual, it basically refers to this as local plus domain security. And what they're really referring to in the context of Blue Open Studio is that within Blue Open Studio, what you are allowed to do is you are allowed to use both a local security system, let's call it the normal security that's built into Blue Open Studio, and you can also use the LDAP system as well. So you can use them in parallel at the same time. And LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, and it's basically a platform independent. So any compliant LDAP server should be able to work with Blue Open Studio. And there are many different LDAP solutions out there and available. So what I did for my little test setup here is I used Windows Server, and within Windows Server, we can add an Active Directory service, which supports LDAP, and that's what I'm using to interface my Blue Open Studio. LDAP is basically to a Windows Server with Active Directory. By no means am I a Active Directory and or Windows Server expert. I basically was able to muddle my way through it enough to kind of show you what I'll be able to show you here today. Okay, so again, so any of your any experts out there, if I don't speak correctly about something or make some mistakes in what I'm describing, full disclosure, I'm not an expert. Okay, so what are we really talking about here is, so what with LDAP, what BOS is allowing you to do is basically, like I said, it's allowing you to manage the groups, users, and passwords both in the LDAP server and in the local Blue Open Studio environment. Um, LDAP groups and users can now be assigned BOS security rights. So now you can use those groups and users as part of your Blue Open Studio security. And then the passwords, for example, that you want to set into your Blue Open Studio users, for example, they will follow the LDAP rules. Okay. Okay, so now switching to my Active Directory Administrative Center on my Windows Server, what you can see I've done here is I have a group here of BOS users, and then within this BOS users group, I have added other groups. So I have an operator group, a remote users group, and an engineering users group. And then, for example, what I've done is I have certain users here, for example, that are engineering users versus operator users and remote users, etc. And what you'll see is those settings will be reflected in Blue Open Studio software itself when you connect to this server. Okay, so now switching over to the Blue Open Studio environment, what I'll show you here is now if you look at my security settings, you can see that I'm telling it to use LDAP. Now we'll go here to the server settings. And then basically what I've done is if you're using this on the same computer, it's very easy. You check the box and it will pick up that domain. That happens to be what I'm doing here. Of course, this can be remotely connected. And then here's my credentials for the server. Then here's a little check connection item. You can see I'm connecting okay. So basically, in my mind, what this means is that Blue Open Studio is talking to the LDAP server running on my Windows server. Okay, a couple other important points that make it helpful here under additional options is it's automatically import these groups and users from the domain. So that way, I believe the only other, if you don't do this, then you would have to manually enter them, and I guess hope that uh, the names match exactly. And then this is also a helpful one is reload the settings upon logon. So that will bring in, if anything's changed in the LDAP, you can pick those up when you basically reopen Blue Open Studio. Okay, so let me go out of here. So then what you'll see is you will notice now in my groups, it basically has picked up all these different groups, and you can actually go into the settings, and then you can see what I've done here is you'll notice now, even though these groups are being basically inherited, I guess you could say, from the LDAP, you can now assign unique access levels to these groups as if they were normal groups. So for example here, okay? And then we can come down here, and if we look at our users now, so for example, if I go into this user, you could see Neil Armstrong as part of the BOS operators group. And now watch, if I want to change the password to a very simple password, which is not allowed in the LDAP password rules. So we'll click OK. And now I'm going to put in my current password, which is complex. And then I'm going to put in a very simple password, which is not allowed. And just to illustrate what happens, and then you'll see it's picking up an invalid password. So even though that password may be valid for Blue Open Studio, it will not be valid because it's getting those settings, it's inheriting those settings from the LDAP server. So, okay, so just a very quick, brief overview of what it looks like to connect Blue Open Studio to an LDAP server. I welcome any comments or suggestions for further information or videos about this subject. So, thank you for watching.